What are the other health benefits of using GLP-1 drugs that are designed to reduce appetite? And what are the known risks and downsides? Why are we suddenly hearing about people microdosing weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro, so they're deliberately using less than the recommended dose? Aside from lowering the cost, does it hold any other advantages for longer-term weight management and health? And who might be a good candidate for this approach? Well, here to talk us through the pros and cons of weight loss medication, why microdosing may be a good idea for some, as well as the best natural ways to lose the pounds, is Dr. Tasneem Bhatia, better known as Dr. Taz. She's an integrative physician and wellness expert based in Los Angeles, and she has her own YouTube channel and a new podcast called Whole Plus, which are both linked below. And as someone who works with patients to help them regain control of their weight and their health, including in some cases prescribing weight loss drugs, Dr. Taz is an ideal person to bring us expert insight and opinion. She starts by bringing us up to speed on how GLP-1 drugs work, along with the major types now available and the difference between them.
There's so much confusion about GLP-1. It feels like this foreign entity that lives outside of us somewhere, right? But in reality, we all naturally have GLP-1. It's an enzyme. It's really something that is used to kind of absorb and remove sugar from the bloodstream. And it's very much involved in insulin regulation. But what happens to a lot of us over time is that we start to decrease our natural production of this enzyme, this GLP-1. And in turn, it leads to a lot of blood sugar circulating around in the bloodstream, which leads to constant insulin spikes. And that signals the body to store fat or to hold on to fat. And so this family of GLP-1 medications is honestly not new. There have been different sort of iterations of these medications over the years, but these are sort of the most novel in terms of effectiveness, in terms of mimicking that natural ability to produce GLP-1. And so, it has had success, I would say guarded success, when it comes to weight loss, so that's what a GLP-1 is. And so the first sort of class of these medications came out. Some of them were oral, some of them were injectable. The newer wave is the Ozempic, the Wegovy, the Mounjaro, all of those, and their, sort of other names that go with them, like semaglutide and tirzepatide and all these other things. And the first ones, Ozempic and semaglutide, just were GLP-1s. The next class that came out, which was the Wegovy and the Mounjaros, they were GLP-1 with an additional sort of enzyme, which actually helped the liver to release fat as well. So we're seeing some evolution of these medications as well. While they're not brand new, each iteration of them is a little bit different than their predecessors. So long story short, we have GLP-1, we have all these enzymes naturally, but something in the body turns them off, and we can talk about that in just a second. These medications are targeting that particular process in the body as a strategy for weight loss.
Oh, that is so well explained. Thank you. Factoring all that in, if somebody comes to you and, they've tried absolutely everything, who do you see as a good candidate for weight loss drugs? And then how do you decide which one?
Oh, it's such a great question. So, there are all kinds of people on the weight loss journey, right? There are people that have, that holiday 5, sometimes it's 10. Then there are women going through perimenopause and menopause, and all of a sudden 15 to 20 pounds show up. And then there are people for whom, both men and women, who have had a lifelong struggle with weight. And they are either truly obese, which we categorize, remember, as a BMI of over 30, basal metabolic index, or they have a very, very high body fat. And their weight loss struggles are tough. They're hard, and for them, even when they institute diet and exercise and a healthy lifestyle, healthy weight loss is slow. So we're talking, sometimes it's a pound or 2 a month, and then it may sort of start to pick up and is 4 or 5 pounds a month. But when someone's got 40, 50, 60 pounds to lose, that seems like a really long time. So the challenge with that population is that they get very demotivated. I have a lot of empathy for people with a significant amount of weight to lose, because we're telling them, and we're judging them historically that this is, something that they did or something that they did to themselves. themselves. Whereas in reality, the physiology and the chemistry around what has taken place there is very, very complex. They've got insulin resistance. They've got this gut-brain connection that has a dopamine and serotonin issue. They've got a lot of food noise. They have blood sugar instability. They've got all this stuff that they're fighting as they move through the day. And you can only will yourself so much. You know,
Yeah.
you've got to fix the chemistry. And so for that population, I would say with somebody who's got more than 30, 40 pounds to lose, it's a no-brainer. We should try a GLP-1 medication, but we've got to pair it with diet and lifestyle, and we can get into that a little bit more. And what happens in that population is when you tone down that noise, right? Whether it's food noise or blood sugar instability or the dopamine response or the inflammatory response, all of which these medications seem to be impacting, then they can kind of finally have the bandwidth to devote to a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle. But then you've got everybody else, right? Who maybe has under about 25 pounds to lose. Now for them, we've got to be super careful with these medications. We have to be very gentle. We have to be very careful. We are changing metabolic set points. And when we change metabolic set points too rapidly, then we put the body into a yo-yo state where all of a sudden the weight comes right back. We've impacted the gut. We've impacted the microbiome in a negative fashion because the risk benefit wasn't really there for the population that has under 20 pounds to lose. So we've got different groups of people that we need to be thinking about and talking about, but they all have a story and their concern is valid.
You mentioned food noise there. And I interviewed somebody just recently who she was 342 pounds. She lost 100 pounds through running and lifestyle change. She'd been heavy all her life and she lost a lot of weight. But she said she had this constant food noise and it could not be shut off until she took Manjaro.
Yeah.
And I've heard scientists talking about an obesity gene where it's almost like you're set up for failure because you never feel satiated after a meal. I mean, do you believe that there is such a thing? Is that now absolutely concrete evidence? Yeah.
It is, but here's my take on a lot of that. So there are genes, they run in families, they turn on, they turn off. You know, genetics are fluid. You know, and that's a controversial statement, but genetics have to be turned on and they can be turned off. You know, it's not a sentence, right? So many people, you know, I have the gene for BRCA, I have the gene for this, I have the gene for that, but all this stuff has to be turned on. And so when the body's ecology or environment is such that allows that gene to turn on, then it's going to turn on. And then, yes, that fight is real and it's very difficult and you can't get past it. But can we be proactive and create an environment that does not allow these genes to turn on? And I think that's the real challenge for healthcare, you know, is helping people, you know, hopefully in the future be able to identify, you know, this is who I am. These are my sort of blinders and my blind spots. This is where I'm going to get into trouble. Therefore, to keep this environment healthy, these are the things I need to do. So yes, absolutely. There are genes for food noise, for binge eating disorder, for ADD, for ADHD, for all these different things, you know, but what I would challenge everybody with is while we have the genetics, it's only a fraction of the story. We've got to understand the rest of it.
Okay, so there are natural ways around it, even for people with so-called obesity gene, in your view.
Totally.
Okay.
And, you know, a lot, and again, it's where you are. I am such an advocate for a holistic approach where we bring it all together. In fact, we're calling ourselves Whole Plus, where it's medications plus, you know, whatever's natural, you know, and really trying to come up with these comprehensive solutions. When we put our heads down and we do things that naturally produce GLP-1, we see results. So that's pushing protein, that's increasing fiber, that's moving throughout the day, that's getting deep, consistent sleep. Even blue light, I feel like, is having some sort of inflammatory role in the reduction of GLP-1. So when we are managing those variables, we are seeing the diminishing of food noise, and we're seeing people be able to manage blood sugar stability much better. So blood sugar stability and food noise are connected. The more unstable your blood sugar is, the more of this noise you have and the longer it takes to turn that off. But what we want to say is, you know, where do you want to begin? Are you just entering, you know, this journey of weight loss? If you're new to this journey of weight loss, loss, if this is a recent goal or recent conversation for you, whether you've been heavy your whole life or not, then you've got to give diet, lifestyle, some natural supplements, some of those type of things a chance, because that way we're healing the gut, we are improving micronutrient deficiencies, we're reducing inflammation. But, if you go down that road for 90 days or so and you're not self-motivated, right? Results motivate you. When you start to see, that you can move a little bit better, that your joints feel better, right? That your clothes are fitting a little bit better. You might not have dramatic weight loss on the scale, but things should be better. Then oftentimes that's motivating for many people to keep going, on that particular path. But when you get frustrated and stalled out, that's where, there's a whole toolbox, and we don't want to throw that toolbox out in the name of just being natural and say like, okay, what can we do to keep this going? Because it's worth it in terms of your heart health, your brain health, and so many other diseases that are connected.
I mean, can we talk about some of the known downsides of these medications at the moment? Because it seems like every time you check the news, there's something else, some new potential. in pancreatic cancer was mentioned
Thyroid,
recently.
Yep.
What are some of the downsides or risks that you're aware of?
Yeah, and this is why we have to have kind of this holistic approach to even these medications. So one of the greatest risk or mechanisms of action of the GLP-1s is it slows down gut motility. It makes the gut go slower, which is what keeps you feeling full, which is what turns kind of the food noise off. However, that can be problematic over the long term. If we're slowing down gut motility too much, then we are impacting digestion, we are impacting the microbiome, we're creating things like constipation, for example, and we're creating indirectly more inflammation in a different way. So that is one of the biggest concerns, is that the GI impact, gastrointestinal impact of these medications is real. So we've had patients complain about everything from constipation to reflux to abdominal pain to chronic nausea, so there's that whole family. And then if someone's having a lot of gut issues with the medication, that can progress to things like heart palpitations, anxiety, even depression, hair loss. These are all things that we've heard about. Pancreatic cancer and thyroid cancer are two risks that we've seen with GLP-1. For whatever reason, they seem to be aggravated by the medication. Either that is, again, because we are impacting digestion and absorption in different ways, but that's a real risk, and that is definitely something to be aware of. The other part of the story is that, again, human nature is, okay, I'm on this, it's easy. I'm not thinking about food. The weight's just falling off. I'm happy. Everybody's happy. But what we've got to realize is that if you're not supporting the gut, if you're not building muscle, if you're not getting the right amount of protein, you get on the other side of weight loss and you're very fragile and frail, like you have low muscle mass, you have a lot of micronutrient deficiencies, you have gut dysfunction. And then if you start to come off of the medication, because now you've created this metabolic adaptation that is not favorable, right? Then all that weight starts to come right back, and we're seeing that bounce back. So I think side effects are real for the GLP-1 medications. And I think there's not enough, I don't know about the UK, but at least here in the US, you've got all these clinics dispensing these medications, but not really coming up with a holistic plan to go with it.
Yeah.
In terms of, this is, okay, we're going to give you the medication. Okay, let's not say all medications are good or all medications are bad. We'll give you the medication, but this is the support that you need to pair along with it. I don't see that happening, and I think that really bothers me in the prescribing of these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, even just from a personal perspective, of when I think about my 20s, when I had no idea how to eat properly and just wanted to be thin. I had a lot of food noise then, and would sort of go between sort of starving myself and then binging, and you just couldn't work it out. And of course, then when you switch to something like just a whole food diet where you're eating naturally, all the things that you mentioned there, making sure you're getting fiber and protein, you don't really crave food in the same way. And that noise is gone.
Tones down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can just focus on what you need to maximize and optimize your health. Whereas I can see if you're somebody who had been overweight and all of a sudden you're just losing weight, you can get into the cycle of just thinking that being slim is healthy. And that's not necessarily the case, is it? And we see a lot with celebrities where they have just got too slim. You can see that the muscle is going.
Yeah.
Quite a frightening scenario. We're hearing more about microdosing now, and I saw
Yeah.
that term and thought, oh, that sounds like a kind of happy medium, where you don't
Yeah.
go hard at it, but you can get some of the benefits. I mean, what is microdosing, and is it a good idea?
I am kind of behind it, honestly. It's not surprising that I'm behind it because honestly, the way we practice at our clinics, Center Spring MD and Whole Plus, is that, you know, we microdose almost everything, to be 100% honest. We're microdosing blood pressure medications and pairing them with certain supplements and nutrients and lifestyle changes. We're microdosing hormones, with the whole hormone,
Yeah,
discussion. It's like, again, all or nothing, and neither one is really right. So we're microdosing
yeah,
hormones, we're microdosing many things. So when the GLP-1s hit, and at first I was like, I don't like it. I'm a huge believer in the gut. This makes me uncomfortable. And as I kind of got my head wrapped around it, and the option to microdose was there, I'm like, well, this might be something. So this really fits in that under 20-pound, 25-pound group, right? Where they may have had hormone shifts, they may have had life stressors, they may have really put their head down and tried to do everything. So microdosing has worked beautifully in that population where we're using literally probably about a quarter, to a half of the standard dosing. And we are still using it. It is still an injection, still done weekly, at least to start. But we're saying, will this help bring your blood sugar down, bring down some inflammation as well, and support the release of fat from the liver? Because so many people today, even children, have fatty liver. And so the answer to that has been a resounding yes, is that it does seem to work on the majority of the patients we prescribe it to. And over time, they don't experience the side effects, first of all, which is huge. We don't disrupt the gut. So they have regular bowel movements. They don't have all this abdominal pain and distension and reflux and all these other things that we hear about. Their blood sugar is stable. So the noise is toned down, but it's not toned down to the point where they're not going to eat. And then the other thing that we saw that was surprising, honestly, is that it seemed to take inflammation down. A lot of people said, they just were less puffy, their joints felt a little bit better. So that inflammatory component got dialed down as well. And with the microdosing, remember conventional dosing, they say you're on it forever. You're signing up for life is kind of the mantra there. But with microdosing, we say no. Our intention is to actually get you off of it. And so what we may do is load somebody on it for 6 months, maybe even a year at the most. And at a microdose level, they're losing probably 4 to 5 pounds every 90 days or so. So this is not quick weight loss. This is slow weight loss, but the inflammation's going down. Overall food noise is going down. They're re-regulating their behavior. And that metabolic set point, that is something we don't talk enough about, is not going from here to here, right? It's gradually correcting itself. But because you're still eating and things like that, when we pull the medication away, we don't have this rebound effect, And the other thing we can do with microdosing too is as we are working to get off of it, we can say, okay, you're at your goal, you're doing pretty well here. Let's move it now. You don't need it every week. Let's move it to every 10 days. Let's move it to every 14 days. Let's move it to once a month. And it's actually worked really well. And I think that should be an option for patients. I think they should be thinking about it. And I know there's a little bit of, at least here in the States, I've seen some, murmurs of like the FDA wanting to come down and ban microdosing or ban compounding and ban these things, which I think is not fair, because what
yeah.
you're saying is that there's only one way to do things. And having practiced medicine now for over 20 years in this space, it's like that's simply not true. You really have to think creatively about the patient. And I love the idea of microdosing, pairing it with the right supplements and the right diet, and really watching people get better. It's so gratifying.
I think too, even with something like skincare or HRT, I mean, I have, I guess, been microdosing in that I always try and find the minimum amount that is
Right.
effective for me, because
Right.
you just get handed things and told like we're all the same,
Right. Totally.
use this amount, and that could have a very dramatic effect on me. If I apply, I've got an estrogen gel, and if I apply a lot of it, I just seem to be very, very sensitive to it. So in the
Totally.
end, I saw my doctor on the other day, and he was saying, "Oh, so you're using 2 pumps?" I said, "I just use a quarter of a pump." He was like, "What?"
Yeah.
That works for me. If I go
Right.
higher, I'm just more sensitive to it.
And I think that we have to trust you, the patient. We're just guides, is
Yeah.
what we are at the end of the day. And I think this whole like, well, your levels have to be here and this has to be here and that has to be here, that's a guide. It can guide
Yeah.
us. But at the end of the day, how you feel and how you're able to exist in your life and how you're able to hold back some of the biomarkers of disease, that's the most important stuff.
I mean, you have touched on this already, but I mean, when it comes to losing weight naturally, I mean, for anybody who's sitting at home trying to weigh all this up, and the good thing about microdosing, of course, is it would be cheaper for patients as well. Especially here in the UK, we would have to go through the state health service, which would take a long time. So a lot of people are just having to buy they don't have health insurance to
Right.
cover it, they're
Right.
having to buy it. But for anybody trying to weigh all this up, what do you think the best natural approach to weight loss is? Is there a magic formula there?
If you are frustrated with weight loss and thinking about the GLP-1 medication, you at least want to start a natural journey first before you segue into the medication, because you're sort of building your own house. You're laying that foundation, and on that foundation, things are going to work much better, across the board. What seems to really work and make a difference, and it's everyone's probably tired of hearing this, but it's really getting blood sugar stability, which is 3 meals a day, loading that protein in the morning, 30 to 40 grams if you're an adult, getting about 30 to 40 grams of protein in the morning, and then eating every 4 hours, cutting off eating around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and keeping about a 12-hour fasting period of time. That seems to work the best because that seems to prevent overeating. It prevents undereating, which is just as problematic. It allows the gut a period of rest in rejuvenation and rebooting. And then it also gives you an opportunity to pick the right nutrients at each of those meals and really make sure that you're nutrient rich, as you're walking through life. And that gives you energy. And at the end of the day, when you've got that energy, then you take that energy and you move throughout the day, whether you're working out or doing yoga or whatever it is, it's really about movement. That's what we're starting to understand. It's like, all the extreme movements and extreme things that are out there sometimes over fatigue people and overtire them and create more blood sugar instability. So it's really about just constant moving throughout the day whenever you can, adding in the workouts, adding in the weights, getting at least 30 grams of fiber per day. That
Yeah.
seems to make a difference. And then getting good, consistent sleep. I mean, I think if you can prioritize those 3 things, for many people, they start to see a difference within even about 3 weeks or so. And then I say, once you master that, if that's kindergarten, in first grade, then you're ready to move on to, sort of like third and fourth grade where, okay, how much sugar are you getting? How many inflammatory foods are you getting? Then you start to get a little bit more granular with all of this, right? And then once you master that, then you sort of move to the next level. Like, are you building muscle at the right rate? So, you don't have to accomplish everything at one time, but I would say enter the chat somewhere.
You mentioned earlier you practice holistic medicine.
Yeah.
Can you explain how that differs from traditional medicine? I mean, from my own perspective, I wish everything was holistic because
I know it's my mission to make
Yeah.
it the standard of care globally. But the biggest challenge, and I'll be 100% honest, I've been in this space for 20 years. And when I first started, we called ourselves, we were the Atlanta Center for Holistic and Integrative Medicine. And there was a little bit of bias when you hear the word holistic back in those days, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the quack, she's got dreads and like Birkenstocks and like that's the image, right? And I myself shied away from it because I've worked really hard in medicine. Like I'm a traditionally trained MD. I've done residency, I've done fellowships, I've done all this stuff. And
Yeah.
it was sort of hurtful to be called that, early in my career. And so we moved away from it and we started calling ourselves integrative, meaning we're bringing traditional medicine together with other forms of medicine. And you know what? Now I'm like, screw all of you guys. This is holistic. We have to think about, the mind, body, and spirit. We have to bring the whole person into our viewpoint to then develop the right plan for them. So the greatest difference between conventional medicine and holistic medicine, I think, is that it's not a pharmaceutical formulaic approach. It's very much more so about understanding who's sitting in front of you, and then in this expanded toolbox, which includes, food and lifestyle and herbs and supplements and other systems of medicine like Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, homeopathy, and all this other stuff, what's going to be the most effective? Or do we need to reach into the conventional medicine toolbox of pharmaceuticals and radiology and surgeries and things like that?
Yeah.
And what it does is it, first of all, creates a bond between the doctor and the patient because we're problem solving together, right? It brings the doctor back into the driver's seat of being that healer. Most people that go into medicine go in for the right reasons, but this transactional, here's your radiology order, here's your pharmaceutical, here's this, we've got to see 20 people in the span of like 4 hours, has made it to where most doctors hate it and they've become robotic and insurance pushers and paper, and kind of restores that relationship, which really is the foundation of healing. So I think that's one thing that holistic medicine does. I think the other thing that holistic medicine does is that it sort of embraces the fact that there are many other determinants of health. And it's not just biochemistry and physiology and pathways. What are your relationships doing? What sort of home do you live in? What is your job situation like? Are you sleeping? And so it brings that into the equation of health because we are only as healthy as the units in which we live. And then I think last but not least, it kind of embraces all the possibilities. It doesn't say there's only one way to do things. It says that the supplement may work and bring your blood pressure down, but you may need to pair it with this medication, And so I think, that approach, the methodology that we use in practice, we call it the Power RX approach. There are 10 foundational pillars of health. There are different pillars that come into focus at different points in your journey, in your health journey. And I think as doctors and providers in that model, what we're always trying to do day in and day out is really address where you have landed and then work to build you out from there rather than the sort of complaint solution approach, which at the end of the day is just chaotic. If someone's running to an endocrinologist, a gastroenterologist, a mental health specialist, this person, that person, and the answer's right here. But since no one's talking to each other, they never get a solution.
I'm just sitting there thinking as well, if you develop a symptom, for instance, I went to the doctor recently with stomach acid, which I thought was related to my HRT.
Right.
But what a doctor, they only have time to hand out the prescription for the proton pump inhibitor.
Right.
And we never get to the cause. You're left trying to figure that out for yourself. Whereas with integrative medicine, that's kind of the point as well. You're trying to get to the root of the problem so you can treat the root and not just
and work
get rid
your
of
way
the symptoms.
Out. Right.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah.
So we don't have people taking these things for the rest of their life, which is what happens.
Right. And I think that's a difference too, right? Like whether it's supplements or medications, we don't come in with the mentality that this is forever. We come in with the mentality of this is where you are right now.
Yeah.
If we can make the right changes, this may not be forever,
So you have a YouTube show and a podcast,
yes.
Whole Plus, which I'm going to link below so that everybody can check it out. And it's brilliant. You tackle so many aspects of wellness. Why did you decide to launch that?
I'm really just passionate about medicine. And I'm very passionate, obviously, about holistic medicine, but not where I'm throwing out all the science and technology and all the things, that are happening in the field of innovation in medicine and things like that are happening at our institutions and universities and things like that. I was like, what is sort of the next thing I really would love to deliver for everyone? And I think what I really want to do is just bring medicine and wellness together. I feel like you've got a medical community that's got their, boots down saying, do this. And you've got a wellness community that is saying, well, come over here and try this trend or this thing or that thing. And I think you have a consumer or a patient that is incredibly confused, or incredibly fatigued with, I don't know which way to go. And I think the intention of Whole Plus is to help people solve that problem, that whether you are, wherever you are in your health journey, we don't have to do one or the other. We really just need to bring it all together. And if everyone had one place place to go for resources and information that was credible and that was based in clinical experience or in science or in, expert opinion or things like that, rather than floating around all over the place, then I thought that would be a great legacy to leave, that, Whole Plus brings medicine and wellness together. It brings Eastern and Western medicine together. It brings together our researchers and our innovators with our spiritual gurus and our relationship experts, because it's all connected at the end of the day.
Are you hopeful that healthcare will change to the point that it's routine for us to go and see our family doctor and we do have those conversations, and maybe there's a nutritionist that works in the practice, and people from different specialisms work there, rather than having just a general doctor that hands out the prescriptions and off you go? I mean, do you think that will change in the next 10-20 years?
I think there are a lot of us working towards that goal. And I think there's demand, from patients global. And this is a global issue, by the way. We can knock the US for a while, but it's everywhere. It's
definitely here in the UK.
It's everywhere.
For sure.
It's, Middle East, it's everywhere, So I feel like if we in the US and UK can be the leaders of that change, it'll spread globally. And I feel like the onus is on us and our decision makers and our policy makers to really pave the way for the future. I think we see very clearly that what we're doing is not working. It's not really working for anyone. You name a sector of health and I can tell you how it's not working. And as the world changes, right, as the environment changes, as food sourcing changes, as, we cross countries, we saw it with COVID, we are far more interrelated, and we've got to have a new model and a new system of healthcare. And so I think we don't have a choice. I think that we can either continue to drive the price of healthcare up and watch people get sicker and sicker and more diseased and see things like autism and cancer and autoimmune disease continue to climb, or we can really start to come together and collaborate and figure out how to do this differently. And I'm hoping that, I and others like me and my predecessors and the people under me, that we all are going to kind of put our heads down to deliver something better to the generations to come. I think we have to, and I think it's shameful that we haven't gotten there yet.
I'll be cheering you on. Thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely invaluable. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I don't know about you, but I finished that conversation with Dr. Taz feeling a lot more enlightened about how these weight loss medications work and why microdosing is likely to become something we hear more and more about as we learn how best to use these drugs safely longer term. You'll find Dr. Taz's channel and podcast linked below, along with a few further suggestions from me around related episodes that I think you'll be interested in. And for more advice and information around how to age well, check out my website, honest.scot. It's linked in the pinned comment below, where you'll also be able to sign up to my free monthly newsletter, rounding up all my latest articles and episodes so you don't miss a thing. And there are some great giveaways with that newsletter that you'll automatically be entered into just by being a reader. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel or followed the podcast, then by doing so, you can keep up with my latest episodes as soon as they're published. But for now, thanks so much for being here today.